Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer with Oculus Rift Reviews. Today we're going to do an initial impressions review and gameplay for Axiom Rebooted VR, a game on the Steam store just released today for every major headset. It normally retails for $12. It's currently 10% off, and I bought it at that sale price today, day of release. The thing that convinced me to buy this game is that I read some reviews on the Nintendo Switch, the non-VR version. So the first thing you should know is this is a VR port, and although you can use motion controllers, the motion controllers are basically just used like a gamepad. So it is disappointing when you first play this game in VR and realize this is basically a seated experience and you don't really use your motion controllers for room scale. It's really just used as a gamepad. I started off using the Oculus Touch controllers, but then I realized, you know what, it doesn't make any difference. Let me just use a gamepad. I was using an Xbox One controller. There is full locomotion and smooth turning. There's some comfort options as well. In fact, there's lots of different options, and I showed that at the very beginning of this video if you want to take another look. I was getting a pretty steady 90 frames per second once I changed the graphics to the medium setting. And this is basically a puzzle game. Now, it's a story-driven puzzle game, but first and foremost, it's a puzzle game. This is not a walking simulator. This is a puzzle game. I'm not sure I'd go so far as to say it's an adventure puzzle game like the store description, but yeah, it's a puzzle game. And there's sort of a story that you unravel as you go along. I've only played 5 hours so far, and I would say maybe I'm 1/3 of the way through. Keep in mind there is quite a bit of content here. If you want to 100% the game, there's like 20 to 30 hours of gameplay. But just from reading some other reviews, it seems that for most people it'll take 15, 16, 17 hours, just depending on how good you are at solving the puzzles. The puzzles do start off a little bit on the easy side, but as you go along, it slowly gets more complicated, and the puzzles do have a nice range of variety. So you're not just doing one type of puzzle. A lot of these type of games usually have a mechanic where all it does is expand that one mechanic. That's not the case here. Now, there is a set of puzzles that do rely on your special ability. Basically, you have like a hand power, and you can either materialize an object or dematerialize it, or you can move certain objects or keep them in place. You can destroy certain objects. So as you go along, you have to use these different skills to open up passages, but there's actual puzzles as well that range in type of difficulty and also the type of logic you use. So there is a nice mix of puzzles here, some easy, some difficult. Most of them, though, you can solve just by being a little bit observant. So I would say the majority of the puzzles so far have not been very difficult, but a few of them I got stumped for a little while till I noticed a couple of clues that were there in order for me to be able to progress. This is one of those games also where you're not really given a direction. So at first you might be lost of where do I need to go, and that is part of the difficulty of this game. You're not always sure where you should go. There's a little bit of open-ended nature to this because you can start a puzzle in one area or go to a different area, and you're just never sure if you're going in the right direction or not. As you go along, though, you do discover little tidbits about the story. Keep in mind, for this story, a lot of it you're left in the dark about. So since I haven't finished the game, I don't want to talk too much about the story because I myself am a little confused about what's going on. But I can tell you that basically there's this corporation, and they specialize in like the digital afterlife, in collecting souls or memories. And then this is kind of related to VR. You kind of get like in a VR headset, and you can experience those past memories or those past souls. So basically that's what you're doing here. You're finding out about other people's stories or what happened to them while you're solving these puzzles. So it's a little bit of interesting, and the thing about it, you get different themes. You get different areas that look very different from one another. Just from this video, you'll see a couple of different looking areas, and also, you know, a different variety of puzzles. This is part of the cinematic scene that you saw there. Definitely, it's a little subpar as far as the cinematics go, and I'll go ahead and let you listen here.
So easy to let her slip away, to set that butterfly free. If only there had been fewer people around. She would have been perfect for Persephone.
I'll be honest, I have no idea what he was talking about. I know there's a particular story for that character, but then you just go to a different area and you're dealing with a different person. So it kind of feels a little disjointed. The story really doesn't come together. At least early on, it hasn't. It just seems like this, you're hearing different little stories, but you're not sure exactly how they all come together or why you're even investigating or trying to find out about these people. As you can see, there's different looking areas, and as you go along, there's just an added little difficulty in having to use your different powers. But like I mentioned, there's also just independent puzzles where you're not really using your powers, you're just using logic. So there is a nice mix of different types of puzzles. I personally have liked the difficulty so far. You know, some of them have been pretty easy, but for the most part, I've had to, you know, think a little bit and just try to be observant to figure out these puzzles. So far, there's not been a puzzle that's been like completely out of left field. However, let's talk about some of the negatives, and I've already mentioned it. One of them is, you know, motion controllers. The other negative is also the visuals. As you can tell, these visuals are pretty low. Maybe PS3 era, if we're being generous. Maybe PS2 with some of the cinematics. They don't look great, especially in VR. One of the great things about VR is when you get a really beautiful looking world, you get that nice sense of immersion. And here, unfortunately, certain areas are just too dark. The lighting is pretty bad, and just the environments, although they're nice and varied, and I like that. I like the how imaginative this game is, how creative. But it honestly just doesn't look good at all. It's not pretty to look at, and it does bring down the gameplay for that reason. The cinematics don't look good. Even though you do have like a 2D screen, you kind of do notice a little bit of 3D visual, so it's not all bad there. There's some nice moments in this game when you're inside a subway train and you can look forward or look to the sides. It looks pretty cool. It kind of feels like maybe this game, there was like intention to make it originally VR from the start. But you can definitely tell the support just from the way it plays. There's a decent amount of puzzles, and I think this game would really appeal to puzzle fans. On the other hand, if you don't like puzzles, you probably will not be into this game, especially with the lack of motion controllers being used, the poor graphics, and just the odd story. Anyways, I'm Fast Lawyer. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.